Welcome to Middle Fingers Up. I'm your host, Kieran, and today I am talking with Calgary-based comedian. He's an influencer. He's also a podcaster. His name is Jeff Silva, and he's known for his show, Planet Jerf. He does stand-up, and that's not all he does. He's got a lot of other things going on in his world too, which we're going to learn about today. But what I love about Jeff in the short time that I've met him is he's a storyteller. He's also a dad of biracial kids, and you guys know how I love to have those conversations being a mom of biracial kids. And he's been sharing his unique perspective through comedy and music. So today we're going to talk all about that, growing up, what that was like for him, comedy, parenting, and whatever stories come up in between. So hello, Jeff. Welcome. Thank you for joining me today. How are you, sir?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing pretty good. I'm having a pretty good day, and I'm Jeff Diesel.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Thank you. Sure. Yes. Please correct. Awesome. And anything else you want to add in the intro? I also ask my guests, so throw that in there too.
Yeah, nothing interesting happening with me. I think I'm helping with a show at the Laugh Shop on October 22nd. That's my plug. We're a friend of mine's recording or taping a type thing, and so that's probably like the most interesting thing about me. And my voice is kind of going because I've been talking a few days. So if it goes in and out, or if you're listening and you're like, I didn't quite catch that, it's because my kids have been home 24/7, and so
yes.
I've met them.
Another thing we could talk about, the Alberta teacher strike, so as well. Okay, so I'm really excited to get into this. Like I was saying to you before we started recording, thank you for answering my message when I DM'd you, because how I discovered you was through your funny song that you did about a mall, a local mall that's near the community I live in, the South Centre Mall. And I listened to it. We have like a little brown girl group chat, and we all laughed so hard. And I was like, damn, like as a South Asian woman, I heard that song and thought, wow, he's calling it out. But like in the best, funny, real kind of way too. And so I'm sure we can get into that as well. But I don't know if you've gotten any other responses from that particular song of yours, if you can share.
Yeah, I was born in Calgary and have probably spent some time in almost every quadrant in the city, like significant amount of time. And so I don't know, over maybe the past couple of years, I delved into the specificity of each kind of place. And I guess that's been resonating with people in terms of picking out the nuances and the special aspects of race relations in Calgary. And so I'll get like messages all the time for different malls, or people requesting me to go to Westbrook or something like that. Comment on that. But I think you were the first one to message me specifically about South Centre. And so it's nice that there was a shared experience.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Like the community I live in, it is a very dominant white community. The mall is sort of hidden. I wouldn't have known about it if I didn't live in this community. It's the best one to go to during Christmas time because it's never chaotic and busy. But yeah, for sure, being a woman of color, living in a community, every day you already stand out in lineups at the grocery store, wherever you go. And then when you live in a community where that is legit how it goes, and you see a brown woman or grandpa of color walking down the street, you're like, oh my God, there's another one of us. And we have those kind of conversations every day in our house, because I also have biracial kids. My husband's also white. And so these are things that, especially if we are raising mixed race kids as parents, we have to be responsible and have these honest conversations, because I was reading an article the other day, like our kids that and when I say biracial, particularly kids that are mixed with white, because that is the dominant privileged race. When you have two different minority races, it's a bit of a different situation in those homes. But for those of us that are a minority and then we're someone white, the article was saying a lot of our kids really connect and look and watch what the minority parent is going through when they go to the grocery store or the mall, because a kid is trying to juggle both identities, and they can see, okay, mom in this house, it's mom is getting a bit of a different response than our dad would. And I was like, yeah, we think that we're sheltering our kids, hiding, whatever, but they feel it more than anything because they're living in those worlds, trying to, mix them. So I don't know if you have anything to add to that. We went like serious, like I wasn't expecting that right away, but we went for it. So,
so my wife is white. We have 4 kids, and we also come from super different, like not just like cultural backgrounds, but like socioeconomic statuses, and just totally different. Like her mom is a cat person, and my mom has a fear of cats, like a phobia of cats. And so we've been together over 20 years, and so we've been constantly navigating different aspects of our culture, and I think like we now have our own kind of family culture, but certainly our kids they're exposed to so much talk about different perspectives, but also like I think it imbues them with a great deal of empathy, because they see different treatment happening depending even which parent they're walking through the mall with. If it's
100%. Yeah.
And so I think that they've become really perceptive as to how to navigate that, and certainly I'm sure they've internalized that to a different degree, but I do think that gives them the ability to empathize with a wide variety of people. And we have those conversations daily about whatever's going on or whatever is happening. And it's funny because we'll talk to like friends or even family who have spent their time in different neighborhoods or whatever, and they're not multiracial. Like on my in-law side, my sister-in-law is married to a white fellow, and like their conversations are totally different. Their experiences are really different, and our kids go to a very multicultural school, but it's really heartening to see how everyone gets along and navigates these differences in a way that's really productive. And so I think that is the dream of inclusivity and all of that stuff. And I see it in my kids all the time, and I'm really proud of them. And so I think it's
amazing
that we're giving our children in a way.
I appreciate what you're saying. I think there is that empathy. Empathy's taught. You're not just, unfortunately, I wish we were all born with it, but everyone doesn't have it. But it is a different level for kids that are growing up in, a home with different races and are biracial, and the fact that you have your kids surrounded around different cultures and all that. And then it's like, okay, there's so many intersectionalities, because on one hand, we're teaching them about their white side, their brown side, where the clashes are, where there aren't, what, like you said, our own family culture. But then you have this whole diaspora of your own community as well, of, like I born and raised, daughter of immigrants. I'm sure you have a similar story. And so where you're like, oh, I'm welcomed in one group, I'm not welcomed in the other. I'm welcoming of some, I'm not. If you're an immigrant, you're treated this way. If you're born here, if you're this kind of, so that whole civic sense, model minority, all of that sort of stuff, your head's just blowing up every day because you're battling stuff with your own community and then also with white privilege as well. So it's like, it's my youngest son, he now throws it at me all the time, because usually I didn't realize my conversations would be like, well, in society. So now he'll be like, oh, mom, in society, right? ... And I'm like, yeah, man, seriously, like, let's talk about it, because I don't know about you, but I didn't get to have these kind of conversations growing up because my parents were just, pedal to the metal, surviving, trying to provide what they could for my siblings and I. And so now we're the generation that's trying to break some of those barriers as we're learning for the first time, and then also trying to teach our kids. So it's like, I'm teaching something to my kid for the first time that I'm also teaching little Kieran too. Like, I don't know if you have those moments in your parenting days.
Yeah, I think like it's the same thing. Like my parents, my dad, my dad's family immigrated to Canada relatively early. Like he was 3 or 4 when they went to Montreal and then Ontario. And so he had a pretty Canadian upbringing, I guess, typical. And my mom came when she was about 15, but they were religious minorities in their country. So they're both Pakistani, but they're Catholic. And when they moved here so early that their like social group was just like that small pocket of Catholic Pakistanis. And so
Okay.
there's not that I kind of, and me being born here in the 80s in Calgary, I kind of grew up with not feeling necessarily like a part of any sort of specific culture. Because my dad played hockey and kind of like just
Yeah.
very stereotypical Canadian stuff. And then they just kind of socialized with like uncles and aunts and cousins and family friends. But beyond that, they didn't really culturally like integrate themselves with like
Mm-hmm.
Pakistani culture necessarily. And
Mm.
so I always fight the idea that like I don't eat like I eat what my mom makes like anglicized Indian food or Pakistani food that's been like I was a fussy kid, so I eat like lots of chicken McNuggets and
Yeah. Yeah.
other that stuff. And so there was always that grappling of like identity with even like when I don't feel like there's always a sense of it's weird it's weird getting racism from both sides where like
Yeah.
brown folks might be disappointed that I don't speak a different language, and then there's white folks who might be disappointed that I'm not delivering skip the dishes or whatever it is
Yeah. Yep.
reinforce. And that's why my greatest identity and probably what comes through my comedy is my life as a Calgarian, which is my biggest identity. And certainly like the kids I grew up with were just from all sorts of different backgrounds as well. And so we just feel like we have an affinity for the Northeast because we all grew up there, and we have an affinity for our malls because we spent so much time at the malls and all of that stuff. And so yeah, I think it's weird grappling with identity and
Yeah.
then talking about that with our kids, and it's a
Yeah.
layer.
Yeah, sometimes you're like, oh my gosh, I'm reliving this. That's really well said.
Yeah.
So how you answered like 6 of the questions I was going to ask you. So I love this. You're a great interviewee, and this is because you do this on the other side. So, but then maybe you can answer like, how did, if at all, as a child when it was little Jeff, did humor or storytelling play a role in how you navigated your childhood?
Yeah, I would say one, I don't know if it comes off through the screen, but I have like many uncle energy in terms of like I was surrounded by a lot of uncles who are all kind of young. Like my mom and my mom came from a family of 9, and she has 3 like had some aunties and uncles, and then my dad was from a family of 9. So there was a
Oh
lot of
wow.
like my dad's family all basically lived in Ontario, but we'd see them every year. And then in my mom's side, we were just surrounded by people constantly. And so there's like an atmosphere of people constantly roasting each other and
Yeah.
really like there's no, especially when we were growing up, there was, and with cousins and stuff like that, you would just like tease each other a lot. I think like there was a tendency, it was weird in the 80s, being Pakistani was like the schoolyard taunt was of Packy or whatever it
Yep.
is. So
Totally. Yep.
and so I remember kids like hiding their backgrounds and they're like, oh, I'm from some other place, or I'm Spanish, or I'm Italian. I remember you start to like hide aspects of your
Yep.
culture growing up just to like not get bullied. I realized very quickly that humor was an inroads to having a lot of friends and building a social network. And so then as I got older, that became my go-to. I think like that was how I navigated everything, was like that's how I almost forged my identity, and how I was like, okay, people might not mistake me for XYZ if I'm so very clearly defined as someone who's into comedy and improv and all of that stuff. And I think that's served me throughout my career and everything in terms of being something that I guess I identify so closely as a comedian, almost
Yeah.
over anything else, that it takes the edge off sometimes when it's just like an inroads to connect with other people. And I also think like I think about like anti-racism a lot, and I think about how defensive people can get about identity things or when they feel threatened. And certainly when we look in like the States right now, I think there's so much reaction from people on the right to say like the replacement theory stuff and all this stuff that gets people riled up. And I think it's two part. I think you need to like keep the fire lit to people, but also I think there's a way in which you can use humor to layer down people's defenses, so then you can disseminate information to them in a different way that maybe they'll be a bit more receptive to it. Versus if you're angry and they're immediately defensive. And so I oftentimes when I have experienced microaggressions or whatever it is, I try and approach it to be like, okay, can I use this as an opportunity to educate someone? Can I humor to then make that connection? Because as soon as someone laughs, the part of their brain that's like trying to defend themselves or try and protect their identity is kind of turned off, and then you can just go at her. And so I think like that's not that this isn't at all funny, but I think that's like how I navigate things in terms of surviving through some of that stuff.
Yeah, well said. I think that is how comedy serves that purpose for many of us. We watch specials, we want to laugh, we go watch our favorite comedians. They are very politically prepared on that stage to talk about what's happening around the world. And I think there's also a responsibility though too as a comedian, anyone who's capturing an audience. Okay, like I have this group of people here, I want to make them laugh, I want to have them leave feeling great, but yeah, can I plant some seeds and whatnot too and get them to look at things from a different angle? Have you ever had people sort of come up to you afterwards, or when you in the moment try to make them laugh and plant that seed or say something? Have you had it go well, and then have you had it like fire back and not go well?
When I started in stand-up specifically, I was very like one-liner pun oriented in terms of like my joke writing, and it was like, and I have Zach Galifianakis.
I was just gonna say very Zach, yes, yes.
When you're starting out, you're really a mix of whoever is influencing you or who you're aspiring to. And I didn't talk about race for a very, very long time. But when COVID happened, and then I was in the work world and facing barriers to advancement and frustrated, really, really upset and frustrated with having to be exceptional but not seeing the same results as other people who kind of seemingly navigate very easily. My humor started to become a bit more about commenting on race, but using irony as kind of as a lever to make comments about that stuff. And that's when I think a lot of shift in terms of people following me and people getting engaged with me. And concurrently, I think I was sharing a lot of my family stuff, and they were kind of understanding who I was. That's really when I think I started to find my comedic voice was through that lens. And so like I mean I've been in audiences where like, and predominantly in Calgary there's a lot of like white audiences per se, and there's situations where people don't feel comfortable necessarily laughing about those things, maybe because they're scared that if they acknowledge them, that what does that say about them? But usually I still have the like boyish Zach mischievousness in me that eventually I can kind of weave it in there where they feel comfortable enough to laugh. But I mean I've been in rooms where even my wife and I talk about this, where like, do we want to start by like acknowledging the elephant in the room, or do we want to like kind of just ease them into that stuff? And so like jokes about me looking like the 9/11 terrorists or whatever it is, for a while I wouldn't tell them, and then I'm like, well, no, that's what I experience every day. I have like different things that are my lived truth, And so I might as well talk about them. And if they're on board, they're on board. And if they're not, they'll come around eventually. And so
Yeah.
I think I've settled on that space where I'm like, I can be ironic about it. They could be one-liners, but it can be about my experience as a racialized person. And it seems to be something seems to be happening. I don't know exactly
Oh,
what.
yeah.
It seems to be connecting with. So
Well, if anything, for you as well, because isn't it so messed up that you have lived experiences? This is your truth of experiencing racism. But then there's like this need, and I do this too, like this need to protect those people that are causing the harm or are like essentially white people. I'm not saying all the white people that come see you are all racist, but that as a community are the powerhouses who cause a lot of harm towards people of color. And then we protect them and we hide our truth. So we experience this, but we don't want them to feel bad. And then it's like, okay, we're not getting anywhere either because we're being treated this way, but then we also don't want to bring it up to them because we don't want them to feel bad. And that was a big, huge shift in my house. My husband married a white girl, and that's what we always say. As a kid, ran away to belong to the white people gang. And I don't even say my name the right way, and I'm still learning how to comfortably say my name. And so I woke up one morning and realized in my early 40s, oh my God, I'm brown, I'm not white. And I talk about this a lot because it did a lot of unraveling, like quick unraveling for my husband too, because he's like, oh shit, you're right. I did marry a brown girl. I have a responsibility here, being a white man, marrying you and all of the issues that come along for you. And so we have had to do a lot of unpacking to readjust. Cause like you, we've been together for 100 years as well. And so growing up in the 80s, like I just did this episode where I feel like our generation talks a lot now about our parents and that, survival mentality, many of our parents, immigrant parents, and we're in this, not surviving, we're thriving. And I honestly feel a lot of my generation, born and raised here, our form of surviving was getting with white people. And there's a lot of us now who are waking up and saying, okay, of course I love my partner. And if they have kids, of course I love my kids. But we have to the pendulum has swung so far and we have to balance this because I'm actually not white and you have to learn how to be with me and I have to learn my identity as well. And I allowed so much and I can't allow this. I'm not going to listen to that musician because they don't care for us, or I'm not going to make that joke because I'm just harming my community. So it's so interesting how I'm like, this cannot, I was saying this to my sister-in-law. I'm like, this cannot just be the 4 or 5 cousins and my sibling and my, who married white. It's not just us experiencing this. There's a lot of us out there that assimilated through love. And now we're kind of finding the balance. And that's great, I think, because again, we have, like we said at the beginning, we have responsibility to these biracial kids too, who need to understand the real way and what's happening. So if those kind of things go on in your relationship too, where you and your wife are like, oh, wait a minute, because you've been together from a billion years ago as well, where things were maybe a bit different than they are in today's climate.
I think that there's I want to write a book eventually because I think that there's this aspect of my wife and I talk about it all the time, and it's called skin in the game. And so sometimes when you have skin in the game with in my wife's case, we have children and we've seen them get different treatment. The best example was our then middle child, but now she's our there's 2 in the middle because we have 4. She was in kindergarten class, and for some reason, when I went to register her, and I had registered her early, I went to go do the meeting. My wife was pregnant. I went to have the meeting. The teacher's first impression was of me, that this was a brown kid. And so even though we had registered early and the kids were all supposed to be separated alphabetically, we noticed that there was when we saw the separation of the kids in the 2 kindergarten classes, there was a predominantly multicultural group over here, and then there was a predominantly all the white kids were over there. And the teacher was always bringing those white kids in early, in the beginning. And so my wife would come and drop off our girl, and she would see them every day in the winter waiting to kind of go in, and they would always be second in, and it would infuriate her because she was like, I can see my kid having to be colder for longer, or she has to, like, she's starting her day with soggier feet or whatever it is. And the white parents didn't really notice anything, and then the multicultural parents didn't really notice anything. But this person who had had both experiences noticed the indiscrepancy between the two groups, and that was the idea that, like, it was like, you have skin in the game. You have that ability to understand that there is unfair treatment going on here, and you can feel it yourself. Your blood is feeling it out there, and that's why it upsets you, and that's why it frustrates you. And we navigate that all the time. And I don't think skin in the game means necessarily like that the person is in a biracial marriage or whatever it is. I think there's aspects of, like, I have my old boss grew up in poverty. Like, he's a white dude who grew up in abject poverty. And then he has a daughter, has both health issues, but is also LGBTQ. And he has the ability to see how people are being differently treated, and it infuriates him. And I think there's other people like that. There's a large group of people like that who've experienced kind of differences in equity and all of that stuff, and I think that's where they feel like they have some skin in the game.
Yeah.
Those people become advocates for causes that they might not necessarily be even friends with brown people or whatever it is, but they might be the people marching up front in these marches for equity because they can feel it themselves, how they've been treated. And so, like, we think about that a lot, I guess, and we talk about that. And it's like, we got to write that book.
You're right. It is like all these intersectionalities for sure. And one of my favorite conversations was with my brother. He, like you, has a very brown man presence. He's, super tall, the beard, the dark beard. And he, was talking to his wife about this a while ago, where he was at the gym and he was the only one early in the morning working out. And then the white woman had come in, and when she had come in, she kind of hung around for a minute and then she left. And he took that personally. He's like, it's because I'm brown, and she left. And so when he came home, he was talking to his wife about it, and she's also brown, but she's like, okay, yes, like, that may be it, but also she's a woman and you don't know her story, like what she's experienced as a woman, and she's alone at this gym with a man. So we have all these layers to, the conversation that we bring, and it is our responsibility to be aware of it. A white man versus a brown man versus a white woman versus a brown woman. And then you throw in all the isms in there. And I think we're dealt the card we're dealt with, or the hand we're dealt with, however you say it. But we have a responsibility to understand the impact. And that's that empathy piece, like you were saying, that your kids naturally get to have, that we need more of us humans to understand of, okay, like when we walk out of our, like my husband and I talk about this too, the impact for raising, half brown kids has to stay with him. Being married with a brown woman, that impact has to stay with him when he leaves the room and I'm not there. And that's not easy to do for everyone, and that's not bad or good, but that's something that he's had to figure out and learn, as do others. My kids as boys are going to have to learn their impact too, and how they are with women. And so I think the best thing we can do is exactly what we're doing, which is like talking about it and being open about it and sharing. And just because your experience is yours and mine is mine doesn't make one better than the other. It's just like, okay, like I'm learning a lot from talking to you, and maybe you'll take a thing or two from me. And can we pool this as like a knowledge house, right? If you want to add anything to that.
I could have leaned into that, but I think for full disclosure, I was laid off from a job I had for 7.5 years. A bunch of people in my department were laid off all at the same time on January 20th, 2025, which is a memorable day because it was the inauguration of Donald Trump.
Oh, God. Okay. Yeah, I was like that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Am I the DEI hire? Is what I was like, oh, what happened here? But it seemed to be the case. There was a reorg. But I had spent so much time. I think like when I was a kid, it was all green lights because I was really scholastic and school came really easy and I was sociable. And I didn't really think about my brownness until I got into the job market. And even though, like, when I graduated from my MBA program, I thought, again, like, this was going to be green lights. I had great marks, I had great extracurriculars, but I just didn't have like a professional network. My dad worked in IT, but he's kind of an introvert, so he didn't interact with a ton of people. And then I was the first person in my family to go to university. And so it was really, really hard getting that first job. And then seeing people in my periphery who had the same degree and maybe different abilities or whatever it is, just rise up through the kind of corporate ranks here in Calgary. And then I ended up in public service and was there and kept on facing like this constant like, okay, I'm performing well. I'm well liked by everyone. I'm a face for the organization. Why can't I break through that barrier? And so all of this stuff has been really highlighted over this job search time, which it's now been 9 months. And we were like, okay, like I now have work experience. I have a great set of references. I'm directly connecting with people. And it's always feels like the barrier. It's really tough when you're young presenting, I guess, or I still feel like I'm quite young, and then I'm a brown person, and you feel like the deck is stacked against you immediately when you enter some of these things where you might not have the on paper supervisory leadership experience, but you know you're a leader. I've been a leader in the community. I've led within my family. I've led at the organizations that I've worked with. Like people follow me literally. And so it's really, really difficult when you're like, even the definition of leadership at a lot of these organizations. I'm not particularly aggressive, but I win via persuasion and ideas and enthusiasm. And that's how been characteristic of me throughout everything. And the definition of leadership is very kind of westernized, especially in Calgary, in terms of like, are you direct? Are you abrupt? Are you? And that's not necessarily the case even culturally within my family. We just like avoid conflict, but we get things done. And so it's like been this navigating of being like, okay, where am I going to, like, how are we going to get through this? I have 4 kids. I was the sole income earner, and we're right now, like, race is like the biggest topic everywhere. Like, DEI programs are getting ended. It's on the news all the time, and it's to the point where, like, white folks are like, oh, I feel like I'm being villainized and all of this stuff. I made a joke recently where I was like, it must have been like a rough 2 weeks. Like someone was, I was like, it must have been like a bad 2 weeks for you. But I had that for 41 years or whatever, feeling all of that stuff. And so it's been really highlighted this year in specific when I'm out there in the wild trying to find my next thing. And it's just been like, okay, like I've been taught to be humble. My parents believe in the evil eye, so you don't talk about your successes, all of that stuff. And I'm like, no, but like the comedy is going exceptional. Like, or like the thing that I perceive to be some sort of a meritocracy, people are gravitating towards me. And I seem to have these capabilities. I've performed well, but how do I go about convincing someone who might right out the gate be like, oh, this is a brown person, he might have misogynistic views. There's stereotypes about being lazy, there's stereotypes of being greedy, and how do you navigate all of those things? And so it's like on the daily, and I think it's on my wife's mind too, as our as our severance starts to dwindle. I start to think about like, okay, like how am I going to leverage this social network? Or I guess I got to become an influencer or whatever it is to figure it out. And so that's kind of where I'm at. But I do think about, especially intersectionality. Like I was like, if I was maybe had more gray hair or with less young presenting, would that make a difference? We came from a poor background. So if I had come from a wealthier brown background, would that make a difference? And you start chipping away at aspects of your identity and your personality to the point where you're like, well, if I'm doing all of that, do I even really want to be at that place? And
Yeah.
so I'm kind of like, well, there's a gem here, and it just requires someone to identify, like clearly recognize that and be like, this is money, or this is like there's something there. And so we've been on the daily thinking about this, talking about this, and the news just keeps on hitting you with like, they always like really say the word Pakistan like in bold whenever a Pakistani person does something. But when it's any other thing, it's like, oh, this person. But when
Yeah.
a Pakistani person, it's like one man from Pakistan. Like
Yeah.
they want
Here we
everyone to,
go. Yeah, the
they're
trouble.
like, oh, great, this is another thing that you just have to navigate. But yeah, so we think about it a lot.
So what's the thing to do? Like here you are having had the recent experience since January, and I so see what you're saying with the conversations you and your wife must be having, and everything is making sense from the beginning of our conversation even more now. And so like what is the thing? What is one thing? We have people listening, we have a platform. You're right, you can be an influencer, you can put the word out and all that, but I mean, action has to follow too. So what as communities, what can we be doing? What impact can we be making so that you're one of how many that are experiencing this? You
Yeah.
just, are using your voice where many don't feel even they can. So what is the thing that we can be doing?
I literally think the more that I make connections with people, specifically like I wasn't a very direct person. And I think like when I graduated from my MBA program, I was nervous or shameful or whatever to ask for help. And now I'm just like, I have 4 kids. If I go another 4 months, we'll have to make decisions about our house, etc., whatever it is. And I'm like, oh no, I'm asking. Like the people in my MBA group, you know me from the dumb videos, you know me from whatever else. Right now is the time to help. And I've always been one to help other people, even when people are like not performing or whatever it is. I still like to just give them the benefit of the doubt. And so I'm like, it will pay off. Like the seed that I'm planting now, when things come to fruition, it will come through and it will be beneficial to you. At the very least, as a good human, it will be good. I think that's one of the things that I've had to do is just really, really connect with people. And then the other thing is that like I've had green lights whenever I do what I love. Like whenever I've had to always balance both just for financial reasons. Like my parents, like I always had to get a good degree. My parents believe in me, they love me, etc., but they're like, they don't know the world of comedy or how you even make it through that. And what my wife and I talk about, like, okay, if it doesn't work out and we're knocking on these doors so hard in this province, and you were facing these struggles to kind of break through, maybe it's time to be like, okay, we can get a smaller place and you just go full bore with what you love to do. Because when I do that, now one of my old colleagues at my old workplace sent me a video, and it was a Steve Harvey video. And if you ignore his now Trumpism tendencies, but also like the Christian preaching thing that he puts on there, the video and the message itself, I think, really resonated with me. And it was like, sometimes you won't jump, you have to be pushed, kind of thing. I certainly think that like I had a degree of comfort that didn't really allow me to thrive, but allowed me to survive at my old job. And I was miserable not being able to navigate that barrier. And so like I'm like the universe, whatever, however it worked, maybe it's the energy I was putting out or however everything worked out, made this happen. It happened, and now I have to deal with it. But I believe that I somehow trust that it hopefully is the universe putting me on the path to do what I think I was meant to be doing, which is making people laugh and that sort of thing. Because every time I put an ounce of effort into that realm, it just seems to happen so easily. And so I'm like, there must be something to it, or like and maybe it's my energy that I'm putting into it. And so Steve Harvey says, like, he interviews a guy, and the guy is like, oh, I got laid off. How do I deal with being underqualified for the positions that I think I deserve, but overqualified for the positions that will consider me? And Steve's like, well, what do you love doing? And he's like, well, I love cooking. And he's like, what do you do for a living? And he's like, well, I'm a sales rep. And he's like, well, why aren't you in the kitchen? Like, he's like, this is God, is what he says, putting you in the position to, why are you trying to get back into the sales rep thing when you know you're not supposed to be doing that? And so I'm like, yeah, I need to feed my kids. My kids eat terrible amounts of candy and all of that stuff. And so we need a dental benefits thing.
Yeah.
But I realized in this process that I have this other thing that I have to make work. Like, even if I end up somewhere, I have to make this other thing work, because in order for my kids to not go through what I went through, I need to use all of my talents and abilities to put them in a position where they have at least the autonomy to decide what they want to do and feel comfortable and protected and all of that stuff. And we're like, okay, well, if it doesn't work out, do we like just move into a condo and travel and start a YouTube channel? Do you do your writing full time? Then you can travel and perform in different places other than Calgary? And so those are the things that we're trying to navigate. If the world is putting up all these barriers to prevent you from what you think you should be doing, maybe you got to circumvent that and move to something that might be a little bit more easier, even though it seems like a longer shot.
You know what, a lot of what I'm picking up from you too, in coming from, again, your racial background, is you're talking about something that is so new, which is like arts and culture. We didn't grow up with that kind of encouragement, because it was survival, do the job, go to school, education, model minority, all of that. And when in your community there is arts and culture, you know you are thriving as a community. But for the artists and the creatives, it is very hard to adjust to make it like, this is my career, because for so long as society, you've been taught that that's like very wishy-washy kind of things to do. And yet I think you're in this space where you're sifting through that and figuring out, oh, this is my skill, this is my joy. And honestly, like, for your kids to watch what you are doing, I think it's great lessons they're going to take of, dad with mom's support are doing something that they find joy in. Like, when did we get to have those kind of conversations really growing up? It was not often. You think of all of our role models growing up, at least for me, lovely aunts, uncles, grandparents, everyone, but they all had their head to the ground and they had to survive. They had to work. And they didn't get to fulfill their dreams. And so good for you to, in some ways, it's like a privilege to be where you're at, which is, I know, kind of silly to say because you're up against, mortgage and all this, but there is a silver lining in that. And you and your family get to decide what that is. So yeah, we're just used to feeling like success is living in a home where every kid gets a bedroom and there's a lot of bathrooms and stairs to walk up and down. But a home is where there's safety and opportunity to thrive and have creative conversations like you and your wife must with the kids. So I will go to every one of your shows. So I will pay and I will help, because I think you do have a skill. I think you speak so well, and you're the one that has to now decide if you're going to get out of your own way and push through and do something that really we don't get an opportunity to do in our communities in the way that you do. And I think that newness is the weird part, because you don't have anyone that's paved the way for you.
I growing up and like getting back even to like how I grew up, I was relatively shy when I was kind of really little. But then by grade 5, my teachers were like, oh, he won't shut up. Like, you can't stop talking. And then I was in the school play. I was in The Lion King. I thought like it was because I was good at acting, but it was because I was like the first kid with a beard and chest hair. So they could save on the costume of Mufasa or whatever. I thought it was like my path, or I thought it was like I was the chosen one. And then I ended up in our school in Calgary. Bishop McNally had a drama teacher, had like a really great reputation within the school board. And when they were building our school, they built like probably like the second best theater in Calgary in
Amazing.
our high school. And there were so many kids from my high school in my area who ended up in the arts or ended up pursuing in the arts, like me and like I'm really close with Andrew Fung. Me and him grew up as kind of best friends. We're in like 5 different group chats together. There's other people from our quadrant who've gone on to pursue the arts, other people from our high school who are comedians, working comedians in different places. But that was always the path out. And then I was thinking like, oh, there was no end game for it when I was really young. You just did it because you loved it. There was no industry here. There was no like aspect of like, oh, I'm even gonna get into a festival. And when I was doing Loose Moose, I was just like, oh, that's cool. Like I did that for 7 years. It became my first network, really. It's the people that I'm still kind of attached to or who I'll go to for help in terms of like my improv mentors are from there. My writing partner group is from there, and those people kind of care for me. But when I went to do my MBA, I had found that I had always like I'd started doing videos and stuff like that, and it was early YouTube days, and some of them kind of took off. And
Mm.
and so I was like, okay, there's something to this, and I had put together a little portfolio. And so when I went to do part of the reason why I did my MBA was one, I needed like some sort of solid degree beyond my psychology degree to be like, oh, this person can also do business. And
Mm.
my law had done an MBA, and my sister-in-law had done it, and there were these white people that had navigated the business world really well. And so I was like, I'm going to do that. But the other reason I did it was because I learned through like an internet forum that you could submit a package to the Conan O'Brien show.
Oh.
And so I had aspired to be an intern for Conan since I was 15. And you didn't really think that that would ever be a possibility. But when I went back to do my internship, I was like, you know what? I have all these sketches. I found the mailing address, and I was like, I'm just going to send it and see if I can get my internship while I'm doing my MBA program. And then, like in 2009, they called and they were like, hey, can you come interview? So we flew out to LA, my wife and I, we were just engaged at that point, and they were like, yeah, we're going to give you the internship, and you can come in the summer. So we go back home, and then like Jay Leno was like upset about his position at NBC, and he wanted the Tonight Show back, and his show got canceled. And so we were like, oh, that's it, I guess. Like that's as close as to that dream that I could get. But then we sent a letter when Conan was doing his tour, and my sister and my wife handed it to one of his like people at the tour. And in November of 2010, they're like, hey, we got your letter. Conan has his new TBS show. Do you want to come and do your internship in next summer? And I was like, yeah, that's great, but I need to be able to receive school credit in order to do it because you can't pay me. And so what I did was the Haskayne School of Business let me drop a few classes and enroll in like a thesis-based MBA type thing.
Mm.
And so when my wife and I got married, our honeymoon was moving to Los Angeles, and I worked at Conan for 3 months, 4 months, and it was the best. It was like the greatest work environment, the best like. But I then came back and thought, oh, this is going to be like a golden ticket to like some high-paying oil and gas job or something in Calgary, and no one cared here in Calgary. It was like I was like, this is my hero. This is like an impossible thing to happen, and it happened. And this surely should indicate something about both my business savvy and my ability to dream and realize things and all of that stuff. And it was just like, no, do you have like an uncle who works at Synovus or something like some other way of getting in? And I
Yeah.
was like, okay, no, I don't have that. And
There's
so
no.
and so I ended up in the nonprofit sector and then public sector. But that was my navigation of realizing my childhood dream at a relatively young age, like I was 26, 27 years old, and then having to navigate afterwards, where do you go from there? And how do you either get back to there or figure it out here where you can still have kids and a family and everything else and still do what you love? And it's only been maybe the past 2 or 3 years where I was like, oh, I'm now the momentum's building. I'm starting to find my voice, starting to find people who are gravitating towards me, and maybe now there might be a chance of doing that professionally. But it's been like a 20-year journey. And in between this blip where I was like living out the dream in LA.
Character building. Like, what big learning about yourself? What do you feel when you look back that you know about you now that maybe you didn't even know when you were on Conan?
I think that you can if you take the steps to actually do what you want to do, and that means asking for it, doing the work, being disciplined about seeing things through, you can make ridiculous things happen that seem impossible actually happen. And it's not necessarily like The Secret or I can manifest this or any of that. It's literally taking the physical steps of being like, okay, I want a Netflix special. What are the little steps that I need to do every day to work towards that? And taking those steps on the daily to kind of make that happen. When I was a kid, my family and probably culturally, there was a whole idea of like, oh God, like just wish for it and God will make it happen kind of thing.
Yes. Yeah.
And for me and my wife, who comes from a totally non-religious background, we're like, no, that's you have to have that hope, you have to have faith in yourself, but you then have to do the things to make
Yes.
it happen. And so like navigating now the job hunt, like my mom certainly is like, okay, just like pray and like hopefully that. And I was like, yeah, I gotta pray, but I also gotta reach out to that person who works at this company or that company and say, hey, I'm here, I need to make those steps, because if I don't take any steps, nothing happens.
Absolutely. Like spirituality, great. Totally.
Yeah.
Hope and wish, and every 11:11 on the clock, I make those wishes, close my
Yeah.
eyes too. And I'm like, please, you know, but you're right. Like, what's the action? And I think that's what separates you from the rest of the dreamers in the world too. It's like, okay, what's the action? What am I going to do? And you have been there, and now it's like, okay, going back and kind of get that time machine where you get to go back and look at the things that you did when you were on Conan, and even that drive. You had family, you had a lot of believers behind you that supported you in getting there. And so kudos to your wife as well for being a big part of that. And you have these players around you now too to do the next step. I think sometimes it feels a little complicated when we have mouths to feed and we have children, and there's that responsibility of, well, I can't just F off and move here. Like, if I'm going to do that, I do have to think about my kids as well, because their life's going to be uprooted and whatnot. So I can appreciate sometimes you have the blessing of having these kids, and that's great. And then you also are like, okay, now I got to be responsible and can't just be like, kids, today we're going to go live here. And
My wife's American born. Like she's like fourth generation Canadian, but she was born in the States. And so there was always the possibility that if she was working there, maybe I could be sponsored, I can live there and stuff. But the life that my kids have and the beauty and the rich tapestry of cultures that they're
yeah.
exposed to, as well as the level of safety that they experience every day, and teachers that really care for them. And I'm a big advocate for those teachers that myself, my friend Andrew Fung, we both had growing up. Those people were so responsible for believing in us and giving us the springboard and opportunity for us to realize these crazy dreams that we wouldn't have imagined happening. And so we're like, I can't not give my kids that opportunity to have that safety and have that actual experience. But at the same time, we live in a world where you can collaborate over Zoom, you can travel. I've been involved in like Zoom writing rooms. I've been involved in like different things like that, where people will bring me in to help advise on different things and that sort of thing. And so I'm like, no, both things can be possible. And like what we were talking earlier about Zach Galifianakis and him living in somewhere in BC, but going down to LA to do spots or do whatever it is, that world can exist still.
Yeah.
I've grown to really love my city. When I was young, it felt like you were fighting an uphill battle and it was boring, and now I really really appreciate the blue skies, and I appreciate our space. I appreciate like everything we have here, the clean water, the like it can be really really beautiful even during the fall. It's so nice.
Mm-hmm.
And no, and also I feel like I'm like connecting with people here, and so I'm kind of like, oh well, why would I abandon all of that? I can have both. Like you can have your cake and eat it too. You can just eat your cake here, and then
Yeah.
watch someone
Yeah.
else eat a cake on their video screen, and both of you can have cake at the
Yeah.
same time. So I
Totally.
think like there's industry comes through here. You have a space in Calgary as an artist to try things and fail, and I think that's so important in an artist development type of perspective. You're not exposed to industry, so you can really take the time to develop and figure out things and build something.
It's roots, right? Like it's good work happens that way too, where it's done, the arts and culture scene, you would say, is probably grown and I mean, you grew up here, so I would imagine part of why you love it too is you're seeing it's thriving. There's
Yeah.
lots of cool opportunities, would you say, going on in the city?
Yeah, I've always been a big advocate for Sled Island, like any alternative type of festivals, as those places have really embraced me as a comedian and given me platforms to kind of do my thing, because I think I probably have a very specific comedic voice or whatever it is. Like it's an outsider's perspective, I guess. And so the all the like Loose Moose was so instrumental when we were young of giving us a space to try and fail. And even like now, me being a bit more integrated into the comedy, like the stand-up comedy scene here, there are places where people can try things, and there's lots of people attending the shows a lot of times, and there's a young vibrant community of people who listen to podcasts, and they get exposed to different comedians through YouTube and all of this other stuff. And so you really can have a lot of opportunity here. And then I always like my wife, who like has been my biggest pillar of support and believer, like because we're just, like I was just a poor kid, like we didn't know anything about anything, and she loved me and believed in me when we met, and she still continues to believe and love me now as I navigate this next aspect of things. She's like, you have to keep on doing the videos, or you have to keep on doing this stuff, because we'll be out at the gym and people will be like, oh Jeff, I saw the Marlboro Mall song, or like it's like I thought I could do things in anonymity for a long time, because I thought, oh, there's so many like brown dudes around my neighborhood, no one's gonna know it's me. It turns out I'm a very specifically recognizable.
They know you, yeah, for sure.
That's very very like myself, and I look very much like myself, and so we'll be like walking into, and my wife and my kids even this year having like companies be like, come and profile our business and we'll give you food, or we'll give you this, or we'll pay you for this or that. My wife's like, you have to see it through. There's been 20 years of all of this stuff, and now it's like real. Like now it's like you're actually getting things but just by doing whatever you're doing.
Yeah.
So why would you stop that? And I'm like, yeah, no, I need to kind of figure that out and see it through. But yeah, she's been a champion. And certainly I think like this small community of artists that I don't have like a million followers, but the people who are engaged with my content really believe in me.
It's the quality, 100%. I totally know that. Yeah.
Yeah. Zarna Garg, who's a comedian, she said on one of her podcasts, you're not earning 1 million followers one time, you're earning one follower a million times. And I really
well said. Yeah.
I really truly believe in like, oh, if I'm engaging people, if I'm being authentically myself and a good human, those people are going to keep on coming back and be engaged with my stuff. And who knows what that will lead to. But if I can build up a small army of people,
Yeah,
and they will be my advocates, they'll be my champions, and
totally.
they'll follow me through all of the projects, and they'll be there for the ups and downs, hopefully. So,
Yeah, as long as, like you said, you're sticking to what is truly you and
yeah.
authentic, I think then the rest is easy. It's just when you see a lot of trying to mimic and mock and keep up with trends and things like that, I think that's when you have your viral moments and then it's done. But yeah, you stick to what you do best, and that's storytelling. And in the background we can see your podcast name, Planet Jerf. And before we started recording, you were saying you and your wife are talking about getting that up and running as well. So I think, after today's conversation, it makes most sense that you guys, get that going as well, because it's another place for people to come in, hang out with you.
Yeah.
And like you said, opportunities are, you just don't know. You don't know who's listening or not. And I think there's a great moment of teaching and learning and for you through that podcast as well. So
You
hopefully
have
that gets going.
Yeah, there's like a tendency where I post a lot of stuff, and sometimes there will be things that will pop off, and they might go viral, or there might be like thousands of people looking at. But then there's some things that you'll post, and maybe like one person will
Yeah,
like.
I know.
Like you'll have the tendency to feel like, oh, I should delete that, or like I should be. I've gotten more opportunities or more people quoting me things from the thing that got one like or two likes,
Yeah,
things that got thousands of likes. And you can do yourself like, obviously you need to learn from your audience and try and kind of cater to what people are asking for, but you also don't want to dilute your voice by being like chasing that
yeah,
the likes over the quality or the substance of what you're doing, because like you could be doing something great and maybe the algorithm didn't pick it up, or maybe you just wore a shirt that the algorithm saying no,
yeah,
we don't
yeah,
want that, and you might delete that, but that may have been something that meant the world to someone else, or that may have
yeah,
been something that people are like, I see you in there, and
totally.
that's why I really care about it. And so I have to keep on reminding myself that every now and then I'll post like a joke, or like even like I found like the short form real videos will do super well and perform really well. And then I've had times when like the stand up will take off, or sometimes I feel like, oh, no one's seeing the stand up, and I feel like that's my realm. But then my wife reminds me, no, work on the craft of your stand up, get your special filmed, get all of that done, because it will be there. That is your skill. You just don't know how the algorithm is picking up the stuff and sharing it. And so for you
Totally.
to just be like, oh, this person didn't like it, or this person didn't see it, or whatever it is, or this other person I know is getting way more engagement, you just got to keep on parking in and be like, am I being authentic to my voice? Am I being true to myself? And does it make me laugh? And if it like checks all those boxes, like keep it up. I was like, a friend of mine who I'm working on that talk show or whatever with in a few weeks, uh,
Yeah.
at the Laugh Shop on October 22nd. I just have a very small bit that I'm doing on it, but he brought me in to advise, and he was mentioning that, oh, he was talking to some people at Just for Laughs about his show, and he said that they had me on board as someone who's advising or providing some guidance. And the people there were like, "Oh, you got Jeff? I can't believe Jeff's involved or whatever." And I was like, "I don't know anyone there. Like, I don't know
But
how,
hey.
I don't know how anyone would know me in Eastern Canada or whatever it is." But it just shows that there's people who are aware and
Yes.
might not be liking everything, but they might be appreciating what you do. They may have been on the same journey, and you
Yeah.
don't know which one of those people is going to be like, "Hey, I have an opportunity. You're perfect for it." And
Totally.
so we just keep on making stuff. Like we're like, you just got to make stuff. If
Yep.
it's really good quality and we really like it, then it should stay. Obviously, there's things where I'll post and I'll be like, I don't know about that. But for the most part, I try and keep things up because it will resonate with someone.
I think that's well said. Like, you just don't know. And we are in this world of likes and, when you look at your insights and all that, and it's really, you don't know. There's days, like you said, where you have a billion people and days where you have zero. And I think at the end of the day, what you're saying is where it's right, which is sticking to what you believe in, what is truly you, and all the rest will come. And maybe not today, but maybe a year from now, people will look back at some of your work and think, oh, this is really hitting home for us. And I think the bottom line is, as a dad of 4 kids, a brown dad of 4 kids, all the work you're doing is your growth, your joy, which is going to impact them, in the littles that they're going to grow up to be. And that is all the likes in the world versus the community, hitting hearts. And I had a really, really kind person write me a message the other day, which was, she's like, I love everything that you're putting out on your page. And I just want you to know, I never come on and hit like, but I do look at it and it resonates with me. And I was like, thank you for writing that, because that's exactly what you're saying. And that's exactly what we all do, is like, we'll look at something and we won't necessarily hit it. And sometimes, honestly, it's the climate. People are worried about controversy and is it okay for me to like it or not and stuff. So I know there's stories behind why people don't do it, that, but I appreciated what she said, because it's exactly what you're saying, right? Like, it still impacts. We just don't always know. And it's like you meet people at a party and you leave there and you didn't get a chance to tell them, hey, that was a really cool conversation I had with you. And so that's sort of the way it is on socials as well. So I would hope to see more of the conversation we had today, like in your work, right? That anti-racism stuff and the growing up as a brown kid and finding your identity, raising the kids. Because I think a lot of us have our minds and curiosities open now, and we as different races are really connecting to this, because it's like, oh, seeing someone on the screen that looks like me, that reminds me of, my brother or my family member, having this conversation. I think there's a lot of impact that's happening. And so we need all the representation we can, have out there. And so I do hope you carry that out. So I'm gonna start to wrap up, because I know I've taken up a lot of your time, but I have a couple more questions I want to ask you really quick. So one of which is we do a middle fingers up question. So I don't want to forget that. One time in 140 episodes that happened where I forgot, because I was starstruck. Like, he was enunciator of Hockey Night in Canada, but doing the Punjabi translations. And I also grew up in a very like Canucks hockey home where I had to memorize all the numbers and names, my dad and everything. And so I totally forgot to ask him. So I'm always like, oh my God, I cannot leave these conversations without asking. So if there's one thing and only one thing you were going to put your middle fingers up to, what is that thing we want to know? Please share.
I'm going to give the middle finger up to the algorithm, because I do think that if you look at how, I really think that the whole polarization of people right now is because videos that get a lot of comments rise to the top. And so people have really divisive opinions as trying to chase those dopamine hits for likes. And so when people give something that's going to cause controversy and everyone weighs in, you're only seeing like the extreme ends of each spectrum whenever things are populating in your feed. My feed is a lot of like dumb animal jumping around things or whatever. Like, I have friends that just send me weird things constantly, or weird comedy things. So like my algorithm is kind of tailored in a different way. But I do think that what we're seeing in terms of people not getting along and people getting really angry is directly due to people just being exposed to those news stories that are being generated by their specific algorithm. And I think because the algorithm is dependent on engagement, because that keeps eyes on the screen, and the large kind of techocracy or oligarchy of tech bros that's wanting to make money off of that is just like doesn't care about how divisive it's making people. I think that there's a lot of people who I might have very different opinions or different like experiences growing up with that are very angry on both sides right now. And I do think that when you actually connect with people, maybe it's connecting with people about Chicken McNuggets, or maybe it's connecting with people about whatever that commonality that you share is, because everyone does have some sort of commonality. I think that you can really break down a lot of barriers, and a lot of the scary things that we're seeing right now, I think could be eradicated if we weren't just constantly being fed the most extreme points of view on either side. And
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Because most of us live in the middle, and
Yeah.
there is a healthy middle to be in. And I think that's a really good point. I had an opportunity to moderate a panel at an anti-racism event the other day, and that was what every single person that was on the panel, they all were from different races, different spirituality, different background, different growing ups, and they all in their own way said that was like, we as humans are one. We're all connected, and we forget that when we go about in our day to day. And I do think there is a divide through social media for sure. On one hand, it can connect us, but I think we have to be really aware and alert about what it is we're soaking in. You're right. And when we have that human to human interaction, we get to pick up on the nuances that you don't necessarily get to behind your mobile devices or whatnot. And we are raising generations that are growing up that way. Yeah. So you and I can say, okay, kids of the 80s, we can somewhat understand that, we get sucked in, we can pull ourselves out, but we have kids that are growing up in that world. And there's a lot of level of responsibility and awareness that we need as parents as well, of like, hey, like what is happening out there? Because our kids are, learning all sorts of things that some of us didn't know at their age. And maybe you have a suggestion.
Yeah, I think it's just forcing the whole idea of touch grass or whatever it is, in terms of just getting out there and actually experiencing life. We're trying so hard over this teacher strike to be like, okay, you guys need a break from the devices. We need to I'll tell my kids, let's go to Inglewood and let's look at the haunted places or whatever. I'll go on a little ghost tour, or we'll go to a park. We went to a candy shop today. And we'll just try and do different things that are just out of the realm of just staring at the screen.
Yeah.
And just trying to talk and interact like kids, like how we used to when we were growing up. I think really pushing them to I always tell my kids, go make an album. When I was a kid, I would make video. I'd take the camcorder and remake a movie. Or we would redo something, go and do that, or brainstorm something. Or I even told my kid, write down all the lyrics for a song, like a diss track about one of the neighbors, and then we'll put it into an AI generator, and it'll be a real song, and we'll play it on the radio or whatever it is. But do the creative process.
Yeah.
And just make sure you're doing all of that stuff, because that's the key to everything. Even if you're going to use your technology, use it to make something, make something interesting or do something interesting.
That's so cute. Yesterday, I have a 14-year-old, and he and his friends, who, by the way, you haven't seen them for a few weeks, and they look like Space Jam. They just drank the Space Jam juice, and they're super tall. Now we're like, oh my God, you guys are little men. But there's a group of them that decided that they're going to go play hide and seek in the community, but they were going to ping their location, and then you had to kind of go in that area and find them. And so they're hiding in the bushes, and you're like, wait, they're like, we're looking for one kid for an hour, and he's laying there the whole time, but he was hidden so well, and they're on the rooftop. And I was talking to my husband, I'm like, you know what? I'm so grateful that these kids and their friendship is allowing that. A, privilege, we have safety, and we have the capacity to do that. And B, way to go, 14-year-olds. That's so cool, because it's I mean, my 12-year-old, it's a little hard. That's a whole different world of encouraging that more. But it was really nice to see, sometimes you high five as parents, and even though it's not you, but you want to take some credit for your kids doing something that, you're like, oh, yay, high five parent moment. You're out there, in nature, smelling the things to smell. And I'm sure some neighbors are probably going to call the cops because a bunch of teenagers running around, but we'll deal with that as that happens. So I agree with you. I think it's we as adults need that too. Get out and, foot on the grass, like you said, the pavement, whatever it is, to also experience that as well. Because COVID, I think, kind of switch gears for a lot of people, and you become these homebodies in a way that you don't even want to, but you can't help because anxieties and all these sorts of things are taking over. So I think that's a really good tip of like, get out there, go live, go do something once a day that's out of your norm. There's your voice. So that's it. That's look at, you start with the algorithm and then look at where you ended. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
I'll be talking for like 4 hours after this as well. Like I just from talking to talking with my family, my kids, my wife, like there's no off button. Even
you're just going.
Broken through it. So
oh, well, I do appreciate your time with me today. And it's so cool when you have a list of questions to ask and you just jump into a conversation. And that's what it felt like today, was just a real conversation. Learned a lot about you. I really appreciate, you sharing your own experience with the isms and the work that you and your wife are doing, raising biracial kids and with your own relationship. And I'm rooting for you. Like I'm going to keep harassing you. So thank you for entertaining that and messaging back. But I want to know where your shows are and where you're up next. You've talked about this really cool project that you have coming up on the 22nd. You get to be part of. What else? What else can we expect from you? Anything else? This is the time to drop your plug. So where can people start following you? Please share. Tell us. Where can we find you?
Follow me at Jeff De Silva, JEFFDSILVA on Instagram and on TikTok. I'm in the process of trying to hone my 1 hour special, which is just called a bunch of stories from my childhood and growing up and put into the context of my job search and kind of what that means. And I'm so close to having it done, but over the next probably 2-3 months, I'll just be popping up at all the various open mics around Calgary every week. I've been trying to go out and just hone those stories. When I was really young, I used to just write a joke. I was generative, so I would write a joke, burn it, and never tell it again. We just get the footage and then release it. But now I'm realizing that in order to make some money at this, I need to have something that I can share with people beyond that. And so I'm actively trying to get this hour done. And so you'll see me around at the various open mics, probably a Rat Boy at Burns on Wednesdays, and the Laugh Shop I'm trying to do a bit more. I just kind of keep on getting booked at varying things. Laugh Loft in Inglewood.
Cool.
Yeah, and so I'm actively trying to build up to the point where I can then invite a bunch of people and then properly film it, and then hopefully that's a springboard to other things. And then concurrently, I'm just in the process of trying to finish essentially a spec script or a pitch for something that we'll see if that comes to fruition. But nice. I'll be around. Mostly I'll be online doing silly things with my children and that sort of thing. And then, the Planet Jerf podcast. And so my name is Jeff, but I've used Jerf as a pseudonym when I started talking a little bit more about my personal life and race, and just because I've had to work in really corporate professional settings. And so just having a different name was really helpful until things started to go viral, and then people knew that I was the same person. And they didn't really care anyways, because all of my comedy is for good. But the Planet Jerf podcast should be coming back at some point, and it will be on Apple and whatever, the podcast, Spotify, and all that stuff. But it's really just me talking to my wife about the varying things that I'm experiencing per week. It might end up just being me going on Instagram Live and just talking for an hour per week. And so we'll see how that goes. But those are the two main things. And then you'll see me at the McDonald's and the malls and all of the other places around Calgary, I'm sure, that I frequent all the time. Is
it the barbecue sauce and then you have chicken nuggets with it, or is it legit for the chicken nuggets?
No, it's the barbecue sauce and the
right
chicken. But my wife and I, that's something we had to navigate as a mixed biracial couple. She grew up with the sweet and sour. I grew up with the barbecue sauce, and we had to figure out what our kids gonna be. And they're all sweet and sour kids.
Oh, no way. They pick sweet and sour. Wow.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm sure you've had those opportunities when you look in the bag and they gave you sweet and sour and not barbecue, and then you have to suffer and do it, and you like try to. It's not that bad, but the barbecue sauce is just you just eat it by itself. Like you don't.
Yeah,
I don't need anything with that one.
yeah, the combination is like essential to the experience. It's like, why even eat this if I'm not getting the combo? It's not.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm frequently at those places, and people will see me around walking around wearing a dumb hat or a stupid T-shirt. I'm sure. So, yeah,
Well,
that's
hopefully I get to bump into you in real time. That would be really
yeah,
cool.
yeah.
Okay, if you're going to leave everyone with one thing and only one thing, what do you hope that one thing is today before we wrap up?
I always go back to my hero, Conan O'Brien, who said, and I remember watching this and getting in tears when I lost that first internship. He said, if you're a good person and you work hard, amazing things will happen. And I truly believe that there's a lot of good people out there, and they're working really hard, and I think they can do amazing things. So I hope they take that with them.
Oh, I love that. So thank you. You shared a lot about growing up, your creative journey, raising biracial kids in today's world. And I honestly think so many of us will see a bit of ourselves in what you've said today. So thank you for your time. And hopefully we get to see you on the stage soon.
Yes. Thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
I drove right past the Chick-fil-A, heading down McLeod Trail south past the old Cheesecake Cafe. In the deep south of YYC, there's a place that white folks go to avoid minorities. Soft Mock and Tok Tok Tie, Bentley and Minnie So, Dr. Bonnie Quack, Bernard Calabo, Twisted Good Caps, RW and Co, High Hop and Barbary Toe, a combination Susie Shear and Le Chateau. Oh, South Center Mall, where white people go to hang out with other white people. Restoration Hardware, Decathlon, Sporting Life and American Eagle. At the South Center Mall, bought my mother-in-law a blender at the Crate and Barrel. Rolled the dueling escalators at the South Center Mall. I'm the only brown guy at the South Center Mall. South Center Mall.